I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
All right, welcome back to the OHL podcast, everybody. And if you're watching this over on the Night Watch, I'm Buckeye Boggs. I'm the Buckeye guy here at the College Huddle. It's great to have Larry back with me, man. Gosh, it's good to see you again, dude. We've survived football season.
Barely, we did though. We got through it. Barely.
I think that's like the word for both of our programs right now is survived. Yeah. You know what? I would have never thought in a million years that Indiana would have been the Rutgers this season. Like I thought Rutgers, what Indiana did is what I thought Rutgers was going to do.
Yes. Yeah, and you were on record saying that. And we have the preview show saying it. And I was with you because I've said this now. And just to briefly go to football, hey, I said the absolute floor is 5-7. The absolute ceiling is 10-2. We were a couple games above the floor and a couple below the ceiling. So, hey, but you believed in them, and I would have never believed Indiana either. Crazy to see. Good for them, but just interesting season for Rutgers, and then obviously for OSU for other reasons. So
we had everything right there in front of us, just like I thought we would. We'd go to Eugene and lose a close game, but you don't get any closer than 1-point loss.
Yes.
Home game against that team up north. Everything is right there with you. They are 6-5. Oh. Exactly who I thought they were this year. I called that one a mile away.
You did.
And Ryan Day is John Cooper. I mean, he is. It's insane. We are living in the 90s all over again. My childhood is staring me in the face and going, told ya.
Brutal, man. I know. And that's Day. I don't know, man. I've been kind of skeptical of that for quite a while there with in that big game at the end. And now, a totally different Michigan team. And here we are. It's just it's got to be frustrating, bro. And I, as you know, for other reasons, I'm frustrated. Now, look, I'm happy we made it through after that 4-game losing streak in the middle of the season. And I'm happy they had a winning record, all that. But not what we thought could have been,
right.
And so it is what it is, brother. But here we are.
Yeah, so let's turn the page and look at our basketball programs.
Yes. Fun. Another expectation versus reality, Bob.
Yeah, okay. All right. So I am a big Jake Diebler fan. Like I think the young man, and that's what he is. He's a young man.
Mm-hmm.
He understands Ohio State high school basketball better than any coach we have had since maybe Randy Ayers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has the potential to build a winning program here at Ohio State. But his back's against the wall already. Aaron Bradshaw is not he's with the team, but he's not allowed to play. Mm-hmm. He's under investigation. This is the 5-star All-American center who went to Kentucky and jumped in the portal, came to Ohio State, and started the season at the 5-hole for us, our starting center. He's not been with the team the last 4 games. And Ohio State has they've tried to patchwork a glaring hole now that's on their team.
Yes.
And if we're shooting the rock,
yes,
we can beat anybody. But if we're not, we have no presence in the paint at all. I mean, none. And that in the last 2 games, that has caught up with Ohio State. Pitt gets us. They get us buzzer beater. We had that game in the bag. Pitt beats us with a buzzer beater at home. We go on the road to open Big Ten play, and I don't know what Wednesday night's first half was, but other than I can say that was the worst half of basketball I've seen in a long, long time.
And when Maryland, you're the 8 ball like that, it's hard to make up for it, and that didn't happen, obviously.
50-17 at halftime. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Anyways, we're 5-3. And so I'm like, all right, I know Larry's coming on the podcast. I should probably look at Rutgers. I've only seen you play 1 game this year. And I look and I go, wait a second, Rutgers is 5-3? Where? And then I start looking, I dive deeper, and I go, these 2 teams are mirroring one another right now. Like, they are looking at each other. And it's the Spider-Man meme. We're pointing at each other.
Yes.
break down for everybody where Rutgers is at, man.
So look, you mentioned and you talked about the Spider-Man meme, and you mentioned the mirror. The 5 spot for Rutgers, also a big question mark. And similarly, I wouldn't say shooting from the perimeter or nothing for Rutgers offensively. I would say defensively. As opposed to prior years, we had Big Cliff, and you had Miles Johnson before that, where we really had a rim protector and we were solid down low on the boards. This year, you have Lathan Somerville, who is a highly touted freshman, very, very, very talented kid, especially on the offensive side of the ball, working on his defense, working on honing his consistency on the boards. But he's a freshman and he's inconsistent, I'd say, especially defensively. You have Agbole, who is a very, very large human who usually starts at the 5. He had in some foul trouble some of the past couple games, and he's improved gradually. But what you're seeing with Rutgers right now is a team that has 2 very elite stars who happen to be freshmen, and one of those stars, Dylan Harper, he has met and exceeded expectations so far. I mean, we had a loss too, so let's talk about that really quick, just so that people watching, if you haven't followed Rutgers, we opened up with 4 wins against teams you'd expect us to beat, all at home. We go on a road trip, and our first stop on the road trip is Kennesaw State. We lose to Kennesaw State in a gym that's probably a quarter of the size of Jersey Mike's arena, and not to knock them, right? They had energy. They were up for that game. They're a team that knows how to move the ball, but we lost by 2 points, I think. We were getting absolutely smacked for a good portion of the game because we were forcing shots, we weren't playing defense consistently enough, and all kinds of other problems. Anyway, you lose that game. That's a tough loss. You go to the tournament in the Players Era tournament out in Vegas. They beat Notre Dame in overtime, kind of vengeance for that play-in game a couple years ago. You beat Notre Dame, and you take it down to the wire there. Alaco from Princeton last year just shoots like 4 3-pointers in a row to tie it, then to tie it again in overtime, but we do escape. You lose to Alabama, who I think is a very good team. Obviously made a really deep run in the tournament last year and have a lot of veteran talent returning this year in a hard-fought game that really Rutgers could have had till the end. They didn't get it. Then they lose to Texas A&M. We're ranked 20 at the time, another hard-fought game. But this isn't me, kind of trying to paint it better than it is. I think Rutgers has a lot of talent, but here's the thing. You have Dylan Harper. You have Ace Bailey. Now, both very highly touted freshmen. They're supposed to be one-and-done players, both potential top 5 NBA draft picks. Dylan Harper has been incredibly consistent. He can move the ball around as far as assists. He's just probably one of the smoothest players I've ever seen take the ball to the hole. I mean, I have really never seen a player that difficult to deny when he gets near the rim and that smooth getting to the rim. Ace Bailey had some hiccups, at Kennesaw, and he had some hiccups against Notre Dame. He's had 2 good games the last 2 games. Now, last year Rutgers was not good at all on the floor. Jeremiah Williams was probably the best player. He was the best player on the team. He's back. He scored the 3rd most points against Texas A&M. He is a good force on the defensive side of the ball. He can score when you need him to. Other than that, Steve Peichel has put together a team of transfers, most of them veterans, a lot of them from a lower level. You have Jordan Durkak, who is a pretty good defender, very, very, very hot and cold on offense. I'm talking he's either hitting threes when you need him or he's having trouble with layups. You have Zach Martini, highly touted upperclassman grad student from Princeton, supposed to be a very good 3-point shooter. In the out-of-conference games at home, he's been almost invisible. 0 points the last 2 games. PJ Hayes, who's a great 3-point shooter, but on defense, he lacks the closing ability. He gets beat. He's been getting beat on defense. You have these supporting cast members. Jamichael Davis, who can be really erratic on the offensive side of the ball. You basically have 2 superstars who are freshmen, so they're learning a lot of things. But honestly, I have to be honest, Dylan Harper looks already like mostly the finished product. He just does. Whereas Ace Bailey is supremely talented, maybe even more of an athletically high ceiling, but he'll have his ups and downs. He'll sometimes take shots that when they go in, it's a Harlem Globetrotter highlight reel, but when he misses, you're like, why'd you take the shot? I'm seeing with this team a team that has two really talented players and a supporting cast that hasn't found itself. Where do they fit in? What's the best lineup for defense and for offense? And I'll tell you, when the team all participates in crashing the boards and Ace Bailey gets down there and the team is rebounding and showing that effort on the boards, they out-rebounded Texas A&M. They can do it. When Ace Bailey is lacking, getting his nose down in there, down low, and when the team is not turning up the effort all the way on defense and on the boards, this team struggles. And interestingly, despite the addition of these two superstars, and despite the influx of all this talent that were like headliners on their previous teams, there's still some of the same things you've seen from Rutgers teams from the past few years. And a lot of that's good. They've been good under Steve Peichel by and large. But that element that has held them back, which is they go on scoring droughts. They take ill-advised shots sometimes when they get like up to 8 or 9 point leads. All of a sudden you start chucking it up and let the other team back in it. And this particular team has great talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But Steve Peichel wants to coach really great defense. It's been good some games. It's been really bad some games. And perimeter defense, you said if the Buckeyes can shoot, they do well. Well, that's the recipe to try to beat Rutgers is shoot from the outside and connect, because Rutgers has struggled to close out the perimeter. And they've also struggled in the paint, don't get me wrong, but if that's not your strength, that's not your strength. But it's kind of a team that's trying to find itself. That's how I could sum it up, and they haven't done it yet. And I'll finish with this just for the people that think I'm bashing or whatever else. I still have a lot of hope, a lot of faith in this team, and they have as much talent as it can take them as far as they want to go. But at some point, you got to turn close losses into wins, and they haven't done it yet against some of the most elite competition.
Yeah, that's interesting. This sounds like a game where I would, if I'm Jake Diebler, I'm getting our talented freshman three-point shooter John Mobley Jr. off the bench early, getting him into the game. He's leading the team in three-point percentage. He's shooting over 50% from the three-point line this season. He's averaging 14 points a game, which is second highest on the team currently.
Yes.
And so I would get him off the bench early and get him acclimated to this game. See if we can't start a little bit quicker there.
100%.
So my thing with Ohio State is this: without Bradshaw in the lineup, this has been self-evident now this season. When they're hitting shots, they are lethal. When they're struggling to put the biscuit in the basket from the outside, they do not have a second scoring option right now. I think there's one developing in sophomore Devin Royal, who was our sixth man coming into the season, and with Bradshaw's injuries, been thrust into the starting lineup and really needs to play more minutes. And when he's on the floor, he's fantastic. He's a hard-nosed kid. He's tough around the basket. He can shoot from the outside. And so he's really developed well after getting hardly any playing time last year to the end of the season. He's become and really on this team next to Bruce Thornton and Mobley Jr. the second scorer on this team.
Wow.
But that being said, with him, last game he dealt with cramps. He's dealt with cramps all season, and so it's one of those things where what are we going to get from him? Because he's either going to be there and he's going to be awesome, or he's not going to be found. And so this is something where this team, I think, is really running into trying to find a second scoring identity, if that makes sense. Like, we know who we are when we're on.
Yes.
But if someone's going to defend us from the perimeter well, or we just aren't hitting our shots, who's going to be that guy we can feed the basketball to and say, we need 2 points, just go get it, right?
Yes.
That right now seems to be a struggle for the Buckeyes right now. You mentioned for Rutgers that it sounds like to me, tell me if I'm wrong, being such a young and athletic basketball team, that maybe they're slightly undisciplined offensively. Maybe a little bit?
I would say definitely. I'd say, you talk about finding a second scoring identity with Ohio State, and I think with Rutgers, it's been basically you're either feeding Dylan Harper and letting him literally just take over the game and just constantly get to the hole, or your 3-point guys, some combination of your 3-point shooters and Ace Bailey are just either draining from well beyond the arc or just doing circus stuff, or you don't have any other options, right? They haven't found that that other identity because they're still finding themselves, and these players are trying to develop a consistency, and we haven't found it. Either Jeremiah Williams is on or he's not, and it's not like when he's on there's a specific recipe, right? Like Dylan takes it to the hole, dishes out to this guy, or Williams is always, on the wing doing that. It's either you give it to Dylan or we don't really know who we are or what we're doing. It looks like that every game so far. And like you said with your team, sometimes the guys are on and you think you know what you have. Oh, we have a perimeter shooting team with a really talented freshman. Or if they're not on, it's who are we? Where are we going with this ball? Do we feed it down low? Well, we don't have a lot of consistency. Do we shoot from the outside? Well, they can't play defense. It's the same thing. Finding that identity, you're spot on, has been really difficult for this team this year.
Yeah, and the thing that I think for Jake Diebler, he's trying to stress with this basketball team, and I just don't know if they're talented enough to do this, is creating offense from defense. Meaning, let's get pressure. Let's create traps. Let's create easy baskets for ourselves because we're very active defensively with our hands. And it seems like when we try to do that, we end up in foul trouble.
Yes.
It's like, and so then you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. And you're like, gosh darn it, like we just can't buy some momentum based off of our defense. And so although the team is really good defensively, they struggle on the glass, and that has been evident the last 4 games without Bradshaw in the lineup. We are giving our opponents way too many second chance opportunities, and that just kills you. That just absolutely kills you. And the other thing is we're struggling from the free throw line. We're only shooting 60-some% from the free throw line. We make one more free throw, we beat Pitt. We don't go to overtime. We get that game. But, you let them back in the game. You miss the front end of your 1-and-1s. These are things that I think younger teams in college basketball struggle with, because you can get away with it in high school. You just out-athletic somebody, and you're just better. And it doesn't matter that you're shooting 60% from the free throw line because you're going to get a steal, go down and dunk it, right? But this isn't AAU ball, and this isn't high school ball, and everybody's talented, and they're all on scholarship here, buddy.
Yes.
And so the little things matter. And I think right now for Ohio State, they're struggling to find consistency doing the little things right, things that Michigan State does every year, things that Wisconsin seems to do right every single year, right? And no matter the talent level they have, they are incredibly disciplined. They make their free throws. They box out. They win the rebound battle, those type of things. As Rutgers, I think, tries to establish themselves as an upper echelon Big Ten basketball program, which I think at this point you might as well call it what it is. That's what they are. I think Ohio State.
I would say that.
Yeah, I think Ohio State looks at Rutgers and says, yeah, this is the type of team that we need to try to compete with if we're going to make an NCAA tournament, which goes back to the Spider-Man meme. I think we're looking at each other and both going,
dude, because everything you're describing to me, with the now I'll say the free throws are interesting, like our Texas A&M loss. I mean, Texas A&M shot 42 free throws. 42.
Wow.
Rutgers shot 17. So
they did the same thing to us.
Crazy, okay?
Yeah.
So we haven't struggled from the line mostly, even though that's a little bit of a difference this year. But the out AAU, I think it's so evident, especially with Rutgers. Yes, Ace Bailey is, I think, somebody who's used to just absolutely imposing his athletic will on everybody. He can't do it this year. Now, he still had some really good games. I think he had 24 points last game, but he's had some shots where you don't love the selection. But let's put those two aside, because Harper and Bailey, I think, have really been everything we've wanted, honestly. The rest of the team, too. They might have dominated their other leagues or been the headliner on their other teams, but it wasn't the Big Ten. And so,
right.
And you made another point, which I think is really important, especially when it comes to basketball. I mean, I guess every sport, but basketball, I've noticed, and I know you've noticed, some of the best teams in basketball, especially in the college game, the way the NBA has evolved, it's a totally different sport in some ways. College game, you can swarm teams with quickness, relentless effort, defense, like you said, points off defense, points off turnovers, and how good of a team you are at any given time with the 5 guys on the floor can be equally or even more important than how many individual superstars you have. And this team, and it sounds like Ohio State too, needs to really learn to become an elite team and not just a group of elite players who are gathered onto a roster and trying to find out how to fit into a team. Now, it's early in the season, but opening conference play against a team that seems so similar to us in so many ways, I think is going to be interesting, because if you're struggling on the glass, we're struggling on the glass. Foul trouble, we've gotten up on teams, but that was more out of conference. We've gotten in foul trouble later against more elite teams, or at least had more even. So I look forward to the matchup. I kind of like opening conference play this early, especially with a team like Ohio State looking at the barometer, and Rutgers looking at the barometer the other way, because this is a road game for Rutgers, okay? Mm-hmm. So you lose to Kennesaw State. You lose 2 to good teams on a neutral court. You win to a Power 5 team, okay team on a neutral court. Well, now you got to go on the road. Ohio State has some issues too and some concerns, but they're at home. This is Big Ten. Big Ten road games are difficult. Rutgers wants to try to come out the same way you're looking at it as barometer. They're looking at that as a barometer. Can we go on the road in conference and win? Because if not, now you're 5-4 and things are looking a little tough. You have maybe one more easy-ish out-of-conference game, and then you have some tough out-of-conference, in-state rivalries, Seton Hall and Princeton. And, you got to get rolling sooner rather than later. Rutgers has big aspirations this year. You got to get rolling. And so I think this is a big barometer game maybe for both schools to open up. Well, we're opening up conference play. I think it's a big barometer game. I'm looking forward to it, but I got some concerns about this team because of exactly what you mentioned.
It's funny because I was saying, it's really important that Ohio State holds serve.
Yeah.
Meaning we go to Maryland, we lay a stinker. It was our worst game of the season by far. Can't hit the broadside of the barn in the first half. Played much better in the second. Outscored them by 9 in the second half, but you're down so much, who cares? The game's out of control. Like, it doesn't even matter. And so you come back home, and now it's like, okay, you got to hold serve. You can't lose 2 in a row here. That's no bueno, right? So, and then I look at Rutgers, and you said, this is a barometer game for you guys as you look at going into Big Ten play. And interestingly enough, I took a quick peek while you were talking. I took a quick peek at last year to refresh my memory. You guys came to Ohio State, we won that one, and then we won in the Big Ten tournament as well, I think. And so. And I can't remember if it wasn't last year. It might have been the year before we hit a buzzer beater at home over Rutgers. These have been some close games. Is there any talk at all there in Piscataway about, hey, let's go put these Buckeyes to bed here. Let's get some revenge here.
There definitely is. I think last year we just weren't very good. I mean, and that's not. We lost to Ohio State when we were good too, so that's not what I mean by that. But it wasn't a good year. I think a lot of people wanted to forget it. I feel like it was a transitionary year. Mm-hmm. Get from the old defensive old guard of these players, Mulcahy and McConnell were the last ones to really leave, and then Cliff, and get to this new era with these young guys. And it really wasn't a good year. But over the years, since we kind of came into the Big Ten, I think Ohio State's one of those teams that we've kind of gone tit for tat on. We've had some tough games both ways. It's always been hard fought. It's always been a close game. And I think with the aspirations of this year, right? Because all you have now is we don't have a true road game yet, except Kennesaw, and we lost. So you only have neutral site games against Power 5 opponents. And you're going up against the conference foe that you'd like to think, like last year is last year, you don't think you were up to par. This year, you'd like to think that you have an elite team that's going to make a deep run and challenge for certain, standings in the Big Ten. And there's definitely talk in Piscataway that if we want to start asserting ourselves on the basketball landscape in general, and specifically in conference with the Big Ten, Yeah, it's time to go on the road and beat the Buckeyes at home, get some revenge for that buzzer beater, get some revenge for what occurred last year. And with our talent this year and the way the Buckeyes have struggled a little bit, I mean, let's go in there and win that game and set the tone and feel good about the trajectory of the season. It all is not lost if you lose in Ohio, because that's a conference rival on the road. It's difficult to win. But you'll feel like the contrast, losing, it happens on the road. But if you can go into somebody's house in conference to start conference play and come out with a win, you're going to feel a lot better about, okay, put those couple games on the road trip behind us. We weren't well seasoned. This is, when it starts here. There's a lot of talk about that. And I think, just with the schools, because it bleeds into a lot of things. Ohio State, an elite school in so many sports. And so even though it's been more even on the basketball court as of late, I still think there's a level of that's a good way to inject some serious momentum and belief into the fan base. And it's not that they're down. I'm probably one of the most critical of the basketball team so far. Quite frankly, most people are not as critical as me right now, but I want to see that. But I think it'll give people a big injection if they could go in and win. But this team has had its issues. They don't have a true road test like that. The only one they lost. So I'm curious about this matchup. I really am.
Yeah, and to take it the Ohio State perspective of that, I'm curious on will we be able to bounce back and get that terrible loss against Maryland out of our mouth quickly, or is that going to linger? That's one of the things I worry about with young teams is can a bad loss kind of get in your psyche a little bit? And play some tricks with you mentally, or can you just get it out of your mind quick enough and that's not who we were and take advantage of home court advantage, which is debatable if Value City Arena is a home court advantage. That's a whole different podcast.
So it is right.
But now if we were playing at Old St. John Arena, I'd say absolutely, but unfortunately we are not. Your take on the West Coast teams in basketball in the Big Ten this year? I'm not sure what Rutgers is doing with them, but for us, we get Washington and Oregon at home, and we're doing a West Coast swing where we play UCLA and USC back to back out there.
Yeah, let me take a look at the rest of our schedule. I've been so focused on this front end trying to take care of business, I haven't even explored as much. We had some back and forth with Oregon because they took one of our good players a while ago, Omoruyi, which is spelled the same as Amori, but different pronunciation. He was kind of up and coming when we had Gio and all those guys, and he decided to go to Oregon. And so there's been a little back and forth with them. Look, just like with football, I'm excited about adding them. I think it's going to add a whole new element to the league. Mm-hmm. I think I got to be honest, one of the most enjoyable things, like as a sports fan in general, I really mean this, is I absolutely love Big Ten basketball. Like, I love football too. Don't get it twisted.
So good,
dude. It is because the home field advantages, home court advantages, the fan bases, and the style of play. Like, I know there was an emphasis a little longer ago. We want to de-emphasize defense a little and emphasize offense. It hasn't held to a detrimental, level. I mean, it's a physical game. I like all the parity, a lot of years of the teams, the rivalries, the fan bases. I absolutely love it. I think these teams are going to be a great addition. I'm looking at it now. UCLA visits us in January 13th. We have a big gap with all traditional people, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Northwestern. Then we visit Oregon February 16th. Right after that, they did us a favor. We go right to Washington.
Okay. So you reversed us a little bit. Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah.
Then USC visits us, and then we're back to the traditional. So in towards, I guess, the later part of the schedule where we really get the brunt of those West Coast teams with a little road trip out to Oregon, Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and then we get USC at home. So that'll be a challenge just from a travel standpoint. It's not like in conference play we're used to going all the way out there. Obviously, Oregon, a talented team, currently ranked number 12. That's going to be a challenge on the road for Rutgers. And then you go to Washington, and then USC at home. So, look, I think it adds another wrinkle to the conference. I think a team like Oregon, who is talented, obviously, both in football and basketball, now you get to saw them in football, and they sure made noise in conference, and now you get to see them in basketball. And, you're not only adding some cool new places and new fan bases and new styles of play, but you're adding, compatible teams that can compete and really add a wrinkle to the tournament, the Big Ten tournament, and to the standings, and to the strength of schedule, especially with Oregon. Now you've got to go on the road and play them. It helps. So style of play wise, I got to be honest, I hadn't watched a whole ton of Pac-12. I would watch it late at night sometimes. And I know obviously one of the biggest big men from out there is now with Indiana. Is it Ballo?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember him because I remember like Bill Walton 2 years ago when he was still on the air. Throw it down, big man, and all. Like, I like their style of play. I liked it. It's basketball so different than football. Where football, there's only so many games and they're scheduled so you could see them. Basketball, it was so late and it was always out west. I'm excited to kind of welcome them in. I know Big East style of play. I know SEC style of play. I'm still getting to know Pac-12 type of play. So now it's Big Ten type of play, Big Ten West. So I'm curious, and any insight you have into the style of play is welcome too. But that back-to-back road trip's cool. I think it's going to be fun, and I'm glad to have the additions.
I'm really excited to get to see UCLA go up against some of the traditional Big Ten powerhouse teams.
Mm-hmm.
So Michigan State, UCLA should be a fantastic basketball game. UCLA, Indiana will just, that'll just get your blood boiling if you're from the 80s, man. Yeah. That is some epic stuff there to see the powder blues and the candy canes.
Yes.
That's cool, you know what I mean. And then Maryland's, you think of Maryland and their basketball school. I mean,
have been ACC.
They might be a poor man's Duke, but that's
that's that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Mid-Atlantic basketball school, ACC. That's their fan base is basketball oriented, man.
Yep, you got it. So I'm interested to see how that all goes. Larry, the game's 12 o'clock tip. I think Fox Sports 1 is where you can catch it on television if you're wanting to watch the game this Saturday. Tell everybody where they can find the Night Watch at.
So Night Watch, just type in right under here. You see the little icon there, Larry. Just type in Larry K Night Watch on YouTube, and you'll find me. If you're an Ohio State fan, Big Ten fan, basketball fan, go over there and click subscribe. We're trying to push right now to get to 1,000. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, anywhere you get your podcast, just type in that same thing, Night Watch, Larry K, any major podcast platform, and you can get my content as audio only. And, we welcome all new listeners. We're trying to talk as much as we can with other College Huddle affiliates and just people in general, to give you content all across the college landscape, but specifically Big Ten football and basketball. It's going to be a fun journey this year. So Rutgers fan or otherwise, come on over and subscribe. And brother, I really appreciate being on with you. Absolutely. It's always an absolute pleasure.
Dude, Larry's the best, man. He's my go-to for Rutgers. And I watch your stuff just, even when Ohio State it's not playing Rutgers, I'm like, I'm going to go catch an episode of Larry and get that East Coast feel, man. It's great. So I love it. And if that all fails, go to thecollegehuddle.com. Just go over to collegehuddle.com, go to Big Ten, scroll down to Rutgers. There you'll find all of Larry's links for everything, man.
Speaking of that, too, I want to write a big picture article because I do dabble in writing a little. I haven't done it. It'll be on the College Huddle. So make sure you check that out. Yeah,
absolutely. Larry, thank you so much, man. Enjoy the game this week. Good luck, everybody, and appreciate you coming on, brother.
You too, brother. Thank you so much.